Welcome, everybody, to Season 3 of Omnisend's Card Insiders podcast. I am your host, Greg Zakowicz, and thank you for joining me today. As you know, this season has been all about using email marketing automation to increase your sales and not your workload. On today's mouthwatering episode, we're cooking up some post-purchase emails with our special guest, Craig Hastings, Culinary Director and Marketer at Baking Steel. But first, let's get this thing rolling by first welcoming back to the show e-commerce veteran Lucas Walker. Lucas, nice to speak again, and thanks for being here.
Greg, my pleasure. I know that the listeners might not know this, but we've been marathoning these out. I think we've been in the booth now for 16 hours. So I really appreciate the opportunity to record these intros with you. And hopefully we don't sound too exhausted to anyone listening.
16:05 for me. I got here before you, man. So
that's true. You were on time. I was tardy. I figured we're going to be here for a 20-hour marathon session. Those 2 minutes rushing out the door don't matter.
Absolutely. So, Lucas, I appreciate you being here. As always, I've been here all season, which is excellent. Today's episode, my favorite topic, believe it or not, post-purchase messaging. Reason I love post-purchase is because unlike, say, there's variety with like welcome series and cart abandonment, things like that, but there are kind of a direction with those things. Post-purchase, man, you are just open up to whatever in the world fits you. There's so many types of messaging, so many different strategies. There's, of course, all those things related around how many times someone's purchased with you, which can completely change the scope, which I love. Quickly, before we jump into it, benchmark reports from our 2020 stats report. Open rates for post-purchase messaging in 2020, 34%, click-through rates 14%, conversion rates 18%. So those are the numbers we're working with today. Lucas, I mentioned my favorite topic because you could be wrong and still be right, which is great. So right up my alley here. I do find, though, post-purchase messaging, and we're talking, by the way, beyond just the order and shipping confirmation, although they do play a part in it, but I'm talking about more nurturing than anything. You know, I find these to be often and probably the most overlooked messaging of any of them, right? I think there's always things to do beforehand. I think people underappreciate the value that post-purchase messaging can actually have. So for you, one, do you find it undervalued by companies and e-commerce brands? And then, well, let's just start there. Do you find it undervalued? Do you see it kind of right where it should be?
Yeah. And you know what? I think, not to totally cop out, but I think it really does depend. I think that the brands who utilize post-purchase emails get more than their money is worth because you can have a little bit more fun with it. And people are generally more receptive when they've purchased a product. When they've exchanged money with that brand, it's just going to pop out. So you can get away with a little bit more. Customers are a little bit more familiar with you. So you can have more fun, but you can also really do a lot post-purchase. So I've got Ian Leslie from Industry West coming on Rolled Up later in season 2. And one of the things that I'm going to talk about with him is when somebody buys a multi-$1,000 furniture set, the types of emails and care that they require post-purchase is going to be drastically different than if you buy a t-shirt. People know how to throw their clothes in the washing machine. They might not know how to take care of the leather good. And I think that for a lot of really operated type brands, that's where there's a huge level of passion and really creativity that can come through to drive not just customer loyalty, but a lot of value long-term as well. Because once you make that purchase and you get that first order, that's kind of like, okay, you've decided to go steadier. You're not really seeing anyone else, to use a dating analogy. So that's when the real fun begins. And to go back to sort of one topic that I know we're going to jump into, the value add is both very reactive or really proactive in sort of trying to avoid maybe any customer support inquiries and try to get people to sign up for your loyalty program, leave a review. But it's also a great way to drive additional sales and revenues from maybe some alternative channels that people don't necessarily know about.
So I like the way you led into that because you mentioned the kind of the brand oriented things, right? Customer satisfaction, having fun with them, making sure everything's perfect with the order, which ultimately will help repeat purchases. You mentioned the other side, right? You can also use them to cross-sell and drive sales. Do you have a personal opinion about whether the post-purchase messaging should be to drive sales or the goal should be to reinforce the brand? Or do you think they're not mutually exclusive with one another?
I think that first, it has to be reinforce the brand and just build the trust of your customer. First and foremost, because if you can't do that, then you can't sell. It's almost like in Monopoly, my house rules are that you have to go once around the board before you can start buying properties. So you really need to take that first step, and then you can start to move it to driving sales. But there's a lot of different ways that you can do that as well beyond just more products. So let's say carrots, for example, I know that we discussed them on another episode. They could link to, say, one of their retail partners and even do a little bit of affiliate revenue in that purchase for companion products or work with other brands that they have relationships with. So you can really grow your revenues in ways that may not be how you would traditionally expect it to grow as well, beyond things like replenishment or additional cross sells, upsells, whatever terminology you want to use.
Yeah, and you mentioned upcoming guests on the Rolled Up podcast about taking care, product care emails and how you want to nurture that. And I think you might look at it and say, okay, well, I'm not selling a $4,000 or $2,000 couch here. I don't have that. And I think this is the one thing when I used to talk to companies all the time was there's something there regardless of the type of products you sell. And it might not always be product care, but tips, how to use the product better, how to get the most life out of it. Or, if you do have something where product care fits into that, it could be clothing, could be waterproofing sneakers, could be jewelry, could be really anything.
Well, let's use baking steel as a great example. One of their blog posts is my pizza stone cracked and how to prevent it. So it's showing that care. If you spent $100 to $200 on something, you want to really make sure your customers are happy with this. And this might be as simple as saying, hey, let it fully cool. Here's why. And you can use that to highlight your customer success strategy or your customer support strategy. But one of my big philosophies is the best customer support interaction is one that you can avoid. You don't want your customer to be contacting you and saying, hey, I ran it under cold water and it just cracked. You don't want to be doing that. So if you can show, hey, here's how to clean it after your first cook. Here's how to clean it after cooking 75 pizzas on your baking steel. So it really, for anything that's really a buy it for life type of product, any sort of maintenance or care, and this is the beauty of automations. If once a month you kind of come out with a good piece of content, you can just see where that fits into your automations and just either add it to the end or say, you know what, we send 12 post-purchase emails over the course of 6 months after purchase, but we notice that there's a little bit of drop off on that fifth one. Let's try to replace that and let's just see what we do so you can continue your customer engagement so they continue to use, love, and recommend your product.
It's a really good example on the baking steel, right? This is just content they have on their website. So they're obviously selling a replacement to a baking stone, right? They don't want you to use the baking stone. They want you to use the baking steel, which I love. But they're also saying, yeah, we recognize that people have baking stones. Great. If you have it and love it, here's how to take care of it. By the way, if you need something else, right? Maybe it's an accessory to go with the stone. We can serve those needs. And hopefully they'll probably want you to graduate into buying a baking steel to replace the stone, but you can still do things. The conversation I'm going to have later is around, they have multiple post-purchase series based on what you're buying. So whether you're buying a griddle, a steel, an accessory, they're going to tailor custom messaging to you based on those particular things so you can get the most out of that, right? But to your point, how to care for it. This is how to, make sure it's warmed up the right way. Here's some recipes for you, right? We want you to get the most out of that product.
And this is my whole philosophy on Pit Stop, is that how content really gets customers unstuck. So you buy the baking steel, you think you're going to make pizza, then making the dough is just too much work. Well, it might just be that one recipe was too much work and you don't know how to do it easily, or you don't know how to enjoy your pizza. You might actually prefer Detroit style pizza. And so guess what? They have the recipe on the blog for Detroit style pizza. And maybe just almost like a re-engagement campaign in software. It's bringing your customers back to using your product. So that way you can have them reuse that product. Maybe they went all winter, didn't use their baking steel, and you show them, you know what, you can take it camping, you can put it on the grill. Here are over 20 easy ways to enjoy your baking steel this summer. And being up north in Canada, where we've got 4 or 5 great months, anything that I can do outside, I'm going to be a fan of, and that's going to resonate.
So I'm a fan of Detroit style pizza, by the way, Lucas. I don't know how you feel on this thing, but it's very similar to I grew up in Buffalo, and it's very similar to the pizza I'm used to there. So I'm a big Detroit pizza fan.
It's my preferred thick crust style pizza.
There you go. So I think everything we're talking about boils down to, again, nurturing the customer, right? And making the purchase experience better. So it's not just, hey, thanks for your order, and then tomorrow I send you another promotional message asking you to buy more stuff, right? We're trying to nurture a customer, whether it's a first-time purchaser and we want to get them to come back, or you mentioned, they bought 4 or 5 times from me. Like, what can I deliver to them? Because I know that their purchase might drop off after the 5th time, like you mentioned. I'm going to ask you on this one. So you used to run an e-commerce brand. Mm-hmm. Did you guys do a lot of post-purchase messaging when you were?
Tons.
Can you tell us a little bit about kind of the philosophy and what you guys did there?
Yeah. So the main goal was to get people to order to get them on subscription. And we noticed that this happens a lot after 3 orders. So we would do 3 orders, and the messaging was different each time. But amongst other things, we'd always ask what they liked, if they could leave a review, and even if they had any issues, let us know so we can correct it. And you're being proactive about that. It prevents negative reviews, and it also gives you that opportunity to go and get a positive review or even a second or third order. Because if they say, you know what, it wasn't great, we could say, depending on what the issue was, hey, you know what, sorry about that, here's a $20 gift card for your next order. Hey, we've refunded your money and given you a gift card. And it keeps customers staying in your ecosystem and hopefully pushing them towards that next order, which you can make right, and then gets them one step closer to that magical third order or subscription.
Yeah, and I think the thing here is we talk about kind of nurturing and doing things like you mentioned, right? We're trying to improve the customer purchase experience. And a lot of people say, well, I optimize my cart, I optimize my checkout page. That's the purchase experience. And the fact is that experience really starts after they complete the order, right? It's the unboxing experience. Even if everything is perfect, your emails are perfect, and it takes 2 weeks longer to get there because there's some shipping snafu that was unexpected, ultimately it reflects on your brand, whether it's your brand's fault or not. It could have been UPS or FedEx that dropped the ball somewhere. That's all part of the purchase experience, and they will think about your brand in connection with that. So to your point, if there's that shipping snafu and you've got good post-purchase messaging, maybe a customer check-in, which we've talked about before. Hey, it's your first purchase. Everything going okay with you? Right? And you get that feedback and collect that feedback. These are all things that smooth over those things or fix it or make them more loyal to you. So I love the examples you gave there and kind of the overall approach to it. Is there, for your side, you said you love being outside during the 4 or 5 months you have up in Toronto there. Are there particular types of post-purchase messages, Lucas, that you naturally gravitate to? When you get one, you're like, oh man, that's a good message. Like, more people should be doing these things. Is there anything that jumps off the page to you?
I think anything that gets started, it's, and for my product, a natural dog treat, very simple and easy to use. But for baking steel, just eliminating any sort of objections, how to get started with your baking steel, and whether you need to season it or if you should just heat it up once or twice, and just really making it easy for customers to get excited. You don't want to lose that momentum of a customer's made their purchase. They've been waiting for your product forever. They can't wait to use it. And then at the last second, they're just unsure if they need to season their baking steel, or if they can just put it right in a 500-degree oven, or if they should put it to 300 first, wait 20 minutes, and then crank the heat. Anything that helps get started, whether it's assembly or anything else like that. And then the other type that I love as a marketer, because it pulls on so many levers, is asking for a picture of, and just using baking steel again as the example, because they're going to be on later on the show, asking, hey, what have you made? We'd love to see some pictures. It drives UGC. It can be creative that you're using in your ads on your blog, etc. But it also makes customers feel naturally a little bit involved with what they've been doing. So it's just an easy way to really get customers feeling involved and building that relationship with your product.
Absolute no-brainer. I am so glad you mentioned that, Lucas, because they're going to be putting the pictures on Instagram anyways, right? Whether it's tagging you, but they may not tag you. They might just put the picture of their pizza creation, or in my case, like the pizza creation failed the first time I did it, right? I just, I'm not a stay-at-home pizza chef yet, so mine did not look quite as good. I was, like you're going to put those pictures out there anyway. So yeah, ask them for it. Ask them to tag you. Ask them to do something.
And it can be as simple of, hey, are you on Instagram? Soar us. Make sure you tag us. We're giving away a bag of King Arthur 00 flour every week.
Absolutely. Lucas, before we get to the conversation with Baking Steel today, I normally ask you for like a pet peeve here. I'm actually going to give you an out here. So I'll ask you one or the other, because I think these might be related to some degree. Certainly, if there's a post-purchase pet peeve of yours, or what the most overlooked item in your opinion is when it comes to post-purchase messaging that brands fail to do. So they might be the same thing, but what would you say?
It is. It's going to be the same thing, just done different ways. My overlooked is because we've been talking about so much about the product usage, and I'm sorry for cutting you off and talking really fast, but I'm excited and fired up about it. I think forgetting to sell and having a future ask, and the sell in quotation marks or ask can be something as simple as engaging on social media with your food that you've made. It can be as simple as leaving a review or going up sort of the ask ladder, joining the loyalty program, making a referral, or making a future purchase. Now, my pet peeve is when the product hasn't even arrived yet, or I haven't had enough time to use it, and they're trying to sell me a totally separate product. So let's say I bought the baking steel, and it might make sense to say, hey, do you want some? So just going back to the affiliate promotion, it could make sense to say, hey, we don't make scrapers or cleaners. It just doesn't make sense. But our friends over at this store have a ton of baking steel certified products you can shop from. And that makes sense. But if I just bought the carbon steel pan and I haven't even tried it yet, it doesn't make sense to try to sell me a griddle right away, because, well, I don't even know if the carbon steel pan has worked yet. I haven't cooked any eggs in it. So don't try to go for a hard sell right away.
I would agree with you 100%. Lucas, thanks for joining. Thanks for giving your insights on post-purchase. So we're going to shift over to Baking Steel here in just a second. For anyone who wants more information on Lucas, how to contact him, check out the podcast as well. Be sure to check out our show notes. Everything will be listed there. And of course, he's easy to find on social as well. So just feel free to reach out. But the show notes will have all that information for you. So thanks again, Lucas, and we'll talk to you next time, man.
Sounds good. See you soon.
I'd like to now welcome the show Craig Hastings, Culinary Director and Marketer Extraordinaire at Baking Steel. Craig has helped develop an email marketing strategy that now accounts for 33% of their email marketing revenue on just 2% of their email sends. Part of that automation includes post-purchase messaging, which those messages are seeing 18% conversion rate currently, which is an outstanding number. I want to dig into the often overlooked topic of nurturing the customer relationship through email marketing. So Craig, welcome to the show and thanks for being here, man.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate you bringing me on.
Very good. We got Craig and Greg today, so hopefully we'll cut out the first names and people will get used to it so there's no confusion here. Craig, real quick, can you just do some level setting for us and just give us a quick rundown about who Baking Steel is and a typical customer of yours?
Yeah, so Baking Steel we are about 95% e-commerce. We sell a product direct to consumer. It is a pizza stone that is made out of steel. Andres Lagston, who invented the product, used to work at restaurants back in the day, and then he was brought up in his dad's steel manufacturing business. Kind of had that aha moment in between that created this pizza stone made out of steel, in which you can make, pizza at home in 3 to 4 minutes, which is pretty lightning quick compared to, the 15 to 20 minute typical cook time of a pizza in a home oven. We just kind of kickstarted about 7 years ago, and it's been crazy ever since.
And full disclosure, I bought a Baking Steel, 6 weeks ago, maybe. Made a couple pizzas on it so far, so I'm still getting used to it, but very quick, heavy. Yeah. I didn't realize how heavy these things would be.
Yeah, that's the beauty. We were scared coming to market at first. Some people and some of the bigger culinary people out there were like, it's going to be too heavy. You can't do it. But now it's like, that's what we embrace. And we've come out with thicker and heavier ones. And it's simple science. Metal stores energy more than a stone or a brick or something like that.
Well, it's so funny because I didn't tell my wife I was buying it, and then it showed up, and I was like, "Hey, I got this baking steel," and she's like, "Thank goodness," because I hate the stone. Right? She hated it. She used it like 2 weeks before, and like something about it drove her nuts. And I'm like, "All right, trash. Here we go."
Yeah.
So very good. And Craig, just real quick, how many people involved in the marketing department for email, I should say, on your team?
I'd say two mainly, sometimes three, but mostly just two of us.
Okay, very good. And which e-commerce platform are you currently using?
Shopify.
Excellent. All right. So, Craig, thanks for the background here. We're here to talk about post purchase messaging, which is one of my favorite topics because I think it's one of the most underutilized automations that e commerce brands currently employ in their marketing department. But I think it's overly important here. So, you guys are doing some cool things with yours. But you also implemented post purchase messaging before you implemented some of those other things, such as lapse purchaser or browse abandonment, which you sometimes you don't often see. Why did you guys decide to do post purchase before some of those other ones?
I think the word you say, nurturing like the customer, I think that's pretty big to us. We're not technically a one and done product, but it's not a recurring revenue. We're not a fashion line. We're not a weekly meal purchase, right? Like we're a product that literally will last generations, but it's so good. The product's so clean and consistent that we basically are able to, the product kind of markets itself. When someone uses it, like you said, your wife, and then your wife talks to her friend, they're like, "Oh, that's awesome. Have more for pizza." And it keeps doing that. So we like to, instead of buy, sell, our selling is showing our product what it can do. Look at this pizza that it makes. Look at this burger I can make on the grill. And that's kind of consistently what we do. We don't send a lot of emails, buy this. It's, hey, look at what you can do at home. It's this easy.
I'm not going to ask you a lot about your day-to-day emails today, but you guys we was having this conversation with someone earlier today, and you guys send a lot of informational emails, right? It's cooking recipes and join us for live classes. So things that really embrace the usage of the product itself, which I think is really cool, right? So I am not a pizza chef by any stretch of the imagination. So 72-hour pizza dough, like that intrigues me. That's helpful for me. So I think that's really cool how you guys do that from a marketing standpoint. It certainly gets people opening. If we shift that to post-purchase, you guys are doing some cool things, Craig, with your post-purchase series, because you don't just have one set of messages going off that, you have one or two that goes every time someone makes a purchase. You guys actually separate workflows based on products they're purchasing. Can you walk us through how your post-purchase messaging is currently designed?
Yeah, so it's the quicker, immediate, within a day, within 24-hour type purchase. It's a thank you from Andres, the owner, founder, just saying, hey, welcome to the Baking Steel team. You guys rock. I think it's very important from even before the purchase through the post-purchase, like we're talking about now, to like every customer is like we treat like it's family. And I think that's important to not lose, even with our scaling up in the last few years. And after that first day, then we slowly, leak some of our favorite recipes and like, hey, looks like you probably have your baking steel by now. Here's our favorite dough recipe, trying to get them hooked on that. And we know that's a slam dunk. And then, a few weeks after that, it's like, hey, here's our favorite pizza sauce recipe. And, here's 3 of our top pizzas that we've made on Instagram. Take a look, tag us, follow us along. And on top of that, we can also like dissect it even more based on products. Like you said, if you ordered a griddle and not a pizza steel, we're sending, a fried egg or a smash burger recipe or a pancake recipe from a chef out of Portland or things like that. So it's kind of cool that we're able to curate those follow-up as well.
When you were looking at incorporating post-purchase messaging into your automation, did you sit down with this idea of, hey, okay, we've got these 3 kind of major product lines, or things that are different enough where you can tailor that content and craft those messages in unison? Or did you implement one and then start working on a second one and start working on a third one? How did the genesis of that whole thing come about?
It kind of came about with the evolution of our products, to be honest. I'd say the original baking steel, which is like the go-to, that was the first product we literally came out with, is a good chunk of our sales. And still to this day, even with our new griddles and things that have come out post in different sizes and shapes, whatever. But it evolved from, okay, we're this pizza stone made out of steel, which is awesome. We can make really good dough and pizza and breads and things like that in the oven. But now we can basically tackle other genres of cooking and food, right? So that's where different skill set, different cooking apparatus, we're like, okay, well, if someone doesn't really care about our pizza whatsoever, how do we make them feel important? Not just like, oh, hey, I have a griddle to make fried eggs and burgers on, but you're sending me this pizza dough recipe. Like, what the heck? I don't want this. So just trying to think through the purchase and then also like pretend to be a customer. Okay, this griddle showed up on my steps. I got an email saying, thanks, welcome to the team. And then, oh, now they actually sent me recipes that make sense for me. This is cool.
That's really cool. And I mentioned during the intro as well, you guys have an 18% conversion rate across the board on the post-purchase messages. So that precludes you to say that everyone, like each of those is obviously going to be a repeat purchase. So I'm curious a little bit about kind of the cross-sell opportunities in the post-purchase messaging. Are you actively calling out other products that might be complementary or different product lines, right? So you talk about a griddle versus the traditional baking steel. How promotional are you getting these messages? And then I guess the follow-up to that is the customers that do return, do you finding buying more product extensions or complementary items to the initial purchase?
So it's an interesting question. The past year, through COVID was great for our business. The stay at home and make pizza and bread game. I feel like everybody started to learn how to make bread and pizza last year. So it was great for us. But that ran to a supply issue. And that basically was like, okay, let's get creative. What else can we do? So like we partnered with this really cool, super old school pan manufacturer out of France that had, uses the same steel we do. So just trying to make offshoots. Okay, the kind of one and done mentality of original baking steel. But if people love cooking with carbon steel so much, I bet they'd love a saute pan or they'd probably love a griddle. So it's like, hey, it's slowly leaking new products here and there to keep people constant and trying to get them so they're not a one and done customer. They might buy in the holidays 2 or 3 steels for their family because they love it so much. But like, what else can we get their hands into that fits our niche market as well?
When you're developing your messages here as well, you have the content. So you're trying to provide, we talk about nurturing, but you're trying to provide useful content for the end consumer here. So your customers, you're providing them enough of that stuff with those cross sells. I mean, 18% conversion rate on post purchase is pretty good, right? If I'm going to say so myself.
Right.
Are you providing discounts or anything in the post purchase messaging, or is it strictly just, hey, thanks, here's some stuff for you. We think we can help you, and let's foster this thing. Do you have any sort of promotional content in there?
We don't really. I mean, we haven't had a sale in the last year and a half, almost 2 years, which is, super grateful that we haven't had to. But when we typically do 2 to 3 emails a week, and a lot of it's based around like a free class up to 500 people every single Wednesday, which has been like, we typically have in-person classes at our test kitchen. We haven't been able to do that since, last March or whatever. So just trying to flip that and doing another nurturing, like, okay, our customers want to see us and what we're doing and developing new recipes and interacting. How can we do that? So we've been using Omnisend every Tuesday and Thursday to sign up, email. Here's a free recipe. Here's the recipe we're going over. Here's the product, by the way, at the bottom that you can buy too if you want. And then the same thing on that follow-up, not a follow-up transaction, but a follow-up to that class is, hey, here's the blog. Here's a video on YouTube that shows our full class and also a short video of just the recipe. And then, oh, hey, here's the 2 products we used during our demo. And that's where a lot of ours, like, we didn't think it would work. And it's worked fantastically, like you said, over the last year and a half for sure.
That's awesome. And, one of the recurring themes from these conversations I'm having from this season of the podcast, both from other brands and then from other guests I'm having, is this concept around kind of getting back to the brand and not feeling the need to discount quite as much, right? So I'm speaking with people who are using product abandonment and cart abandonment, and they're like, hey, you know what? We tried a discount in there, but we found out that we could use other content and still drive the purchase, right? And we're saving on the margins there. Same with Welcome Series. So I think when it boils down to is if you're providing the content that the customer, it matches your brand and that is helpful for the customer, we're seeing this shift where maybe the discounts are starting to revert back a little bit because you're realizing the value in the brand and product versus the value in just the total cart amount. And I think that's a really cool trend we're seeing now. And hopefully that trend continues. Worse for the consumer, better for the, I guess from a price standpoint, but better for the company from that standpoint. But if you're getting other value adds out of it, all the power to you. So that's really cool that you guys are seeing that success there. When you were developing these messages as well, is there some place you turn to for inspiration? It's like, because that's the one stumbling block that a lot of marketers will run into is like, okay, I'm going to do post-purchase. I'm going to do cart abandonment, whatever it is. It's like, okay, what do I put in the message? And then all of a sudden it's like this paralysis. Like, I don't know, you get writer's block. How did you decide, Craig, that, hey, okay, this is what we're going to put in this particular message for the post-purchase series?
It's a mix of like, hey, what do you think we should? A mix of that, a mix of talking to, our Omni rep, and then also a mix of like signing up for half a dozen or a dozen somewhat like spaced companies and seeing what they do, right? We try to support as many companies as we can and like space and like that, which is cool. Okay, what would this company, or like what's this company that is just known for their customer service? How do they handle it? How do they get us to click again? How do they get us to reach out again? Things like that without having to give a lot of margin away. I think that was a big part too, because if you looked in like the outdoor pizza oven space too, like there's a couple companies that just absolutely crush it. And the same thing, there were 3, 4, 5 months out in production just because it was so busy. But like if we can't get a product in your hand for 8 weeks, but you already purchased, how do we keep you happy for 8 weeks, right?
Yep, absolutely. Do you guys ever do like secret shoppers on yourself? Have anyone from your company buy from you and check out, what that experience is like? Or did you do that at the early onset by chance?
No, but that's a fantastic idea.
There you go. I'll take a royalty every time that happens. The other thing I was asking you about resources internally, right? How many people on the email team?
Yeah.
I think typically you find it's either 1, 2, maybe 3 people if you're lucky, but you're also recognizing that we're doing things other than just email, right?
Totally.
Social ads or cooking classes, right? Or scheduling all that stuff up. When it came to actually execution, how did you actually go through and get the execution done? Because that's often one of the most challenging things for people. It's like, I don't have enough time in my day. So sure, I can write the message, but now I got to create the workflow or whatever. Like, how did you get to the point of, okay, that's a good concept. Now let's get it actually live in the world?
Yeah, it definitely took, I'd say I do the vast majority of the email stuff. And it definitely took some help on the Omnisend support side to help me with like the automations and things like that, because that was pretty new to us coming over from MailChimp back in the day. And it was great having that support team just to be there, to be honest. Instead, I feel like, back in the MailChimp days, we didn't even have anybody we could go to for help. And then it was just like, okay, we need to really like focus on the customer support. Like, yes, we're going to be busy. Yes, we don't have enough product. How can we keep these people happy? It became a big focus. And we know that any day of the year, social media can blow up and go away for some reason. But so like we need to nurture our email list. And like it's our moneymaker, to be honest. Like at the end of the day, it makes money for us.
A great answer, by the way. So thank you for that. You're mentioning like having these conversations with the customers, right? Customer service has been a repetitive theme from you, which I think is awesome because I think that's one of the biggest differentiators among companies now is the level of customer service. Bad customer service, I've lost, they've lost me forever, and good ones, they've won me back and kept me loyal. When you send these post-purchase messages out, do people respond back to those messages asking for questions about whether it's recipes or just questions about the order where you can engage in dialogue?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say, especially during our the height of the COVID where we were 6 to 8 weeks out and it was all pre-orders, I could argue that was 95% of my job. I wasn't cooking anything for months because we were just focused on how do we keep these people happy for 8 weeks until we can get the product in their hands. And it was, hey, where's my order? Hey, I know you guys are busy. Hey, I'm super excited. Hey, love your classes. Wish I had my steel. Hey, this, this. Not all bad things. It was things that were basically out of our control, waiting on production. And they were well informed when their product was coming. But it was just like, it was like the hype. Like, oh, I keep seeing all these awesome pizza classes and seeing other people make them. I just want to make pizza at home. And it was like, and of course, they're at home 24/7. So it's like, They have the time to send that email. But yeah, it's all about that follow-up. And that's where we pride ourselves on our customer service because, I mean, there's 4 or 5, to be honest, really good knockoff competitors of ours that are basically strictly on Amazon. And they don't get the customer. There's no brand recognition. They don't give free classes. They don't give the customer service. Heck, there's not even a phone number they can call with those other brands. And that's what we're trying to provide with our product. Like, we're our full, complete brand.
Very nice. I have not attended a class yet, only because my schedule on Wednesday mornings are usually jammed up. But I know you've got the recipe saved on my phone, so I'm going to go through. One of these days, I'm making the dough. Right?
You got it. So you'll be blown away. You won't buy anymore.
Well, it's funny because I think when I emailed you the first time, I was like, "Hey, I got it. We were excited to use it, and went to Whole Foods and got some dough." Right? Yeah. But it was like, I don't want to say Whole Foods dough is bad, but it was Whole Foods dough, right?
Yeah,
you could taste.
I mean, any pizza dough you're buying is going to be okay. It's just it's the level of care that goes into it, right?
Yep, absolutely. So what's next for the post-purchase? Are you guys content where you are now? Are you looking at adding other messages or different cross-sell opportunities, or is it good for the time being?
Interesting question. We're talking with Molly, our account rep, a couple of days ago, actually. We're talking the cool feature that is fairly new for you guys. Basically, like for our company, 71 days after purchase, you see the highest amount of percentage of people buy again, which is a really cool stat to know. And I think we're slowly working into that because we're coming out with a couple new products in the next couple of months. So we're going to start using that and trying to analyze those stats a little bit more to make some of those messages a little bit different. Like, oh, hey, we know you bought a steel from us, a few months ago, but check out what we have now for you.
Any possibility you can leak what those new products are?
Come on, man. I don't get paid enough for that.
What do you give? No, I'm just.
No, there's one, to be honest, there's a product that we've been trying to launch for 2 years, and then we were about to launch it, and it was like the last week of March last year. And it was just like, okay, this is not a good time. We were just getting slammed. And the other one is a lot more, it's kind of like a niche pizza market type tool that blends in perfectly with ours. And that's the most I can say right now.
Very good. I've got a couple food questions for you here in just a minute. But before we kind of kick over there, tying back to the resources one more time, if there are other companies out there who are kind of struggling, right, whether it's a one-person show or just two people part-time doing email, whatever it might be, and they don't feel like they have the resources or the time available to them, what's a piece of advice you might offer to them to be able to execute and get things going?
I'd say start small and, reach out for support too, but like start small. Like I remember like it took us probably 5 or 6 different types of emails to find like a template that we use now that we just tweak every time for an email. But we like even just like the guts, like the template, right? That has our logo, has links to all of our social, and it has links to the bottom to our shop. And then like the middle, you can always fudge with here and there, but that gave us like, okay, it's not going to take me an hour to create this email. I just need to pull content in left and right. So I think like the templating and just, to be honest, play around with it. At the end of the day, it shouldn't take that long if you're sending a genuinely strong message out, in my opinion. It shouldn't take that long to make an email.
Very good. I think it's good advice. And it's pretty common advice we've been hearing as well, going back to this repetitive theme. How about from a post-purchase standpoint, Craig, anything that maybe I neglected to ask you, which is quite common, that you feel is important for the listeners to know?
It might be a little bit more specific towards our style of product, but we're a big fan of kill 'em with kindness and showing what your product can do instead of buy, and then having the option to check out the product below. It's funny looking at like the heat map on the back end of where people are clicking. And even if like the main email is about, hey, take a look at this new focaccia recipe and the video we did on class yesterday, it's still funny how many people will click on the product that we use underneath it because like, oh, I'm set on that, And it's also, having good quality content. You can't have crappy content and expect to sell a product. You need to have good quality content that's authentic too. We have the ability to have a good social media presence. And to be honest, I know your pizza game isn't at a 10 out of 10 right now, but once you're up there, you're going to be posting pictures all over social media too.
I probably will. I took pictures of my first one. I'm like, yeah, I'm not posting that thing. Right. It was.
Hey, but you got a place to start though. You can always improve, right?
That's right. So I still saved them as my
day one.
It looked like one of those Pinterest experiments, right? You're like, I'm going to build this thing. Nice. It came out bad. I'll tell you what. One of my biggest problems was so I got the baking steel, and I also got, I don't know the technical name for it, but like the wood pallet thing.
Peel,
yeah, the peel. So I didn't put enough, I guess, flour down on.
So it got stuck in the launch?
Yeah. So I was like, I couldn't get it off. And then I couldn't get off the peel. And I probably was just being too delicate with it, right? Yeah. Rather than sliding it in. And then it was hard to peel off the baking steel because I didn't have enough flour on there, right? Yeah. To not make it steel. And plus it was leaking all over, right? So I got better with the second turn because I made one for the kids as well. But the first one was just good thing it was mine. But we've been enjoying it a lot.
Awesome.
So, Craig, you're a trained chef, correct?
Yeah.
So, tell me about the transition quickly from chef to marketer. How did that whole thing come about?
Yeah. So I basically grew up in the hospitality industry and ended up going to culinary school out of high school. Went to CIA up in upstate New York. Did my associates and bachelor's there, and then got married and moved out to San Diego. Worked out there, ran ballparks, I ran fine dining cuisine, moved back here to closer to home, ran some fine dining restaurants in Boston. And then it was just like, as you probably heard about hospitality, working in restaurants, it's, working 120 hours a week, 6 days a week, away from your wife, your kids. It's just like, it wasn't good mentally and good for, marriage, relationship, family, and stuff like that. I was just like, all right, I got to figure out something else to do. But, I still want to be in the hospitality food world somehow. And Baking Steel, it was, a weird coincidence. A friend of a friend and met Andres, hired me for 30 days. We launched a new product. The griddles was coming out and we were pre-ordering it. And he was like, hey, I want to hire you to create recipes for blogs and content to send out to people to launch this product. And after 30 days, we launched the product and did an insane amount of pre-sales. And that was over, I think I just hit 6 years last week.
Wow. Very good.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I've always been a tech guy. Like my dad's been in tech his whole life. I've been building computers and just love computers and tech stuff in general. So I always understood like website design, graphic design, things like that. Not much marketing in my world growing up, and then just figuring things out. You know what I mean?
That's really cool. And it's great that you still get to do the chef part of it.
Totally.
With your day to day, which is a great marriage there. I don't think anyone works in marketing who actually went to school for marketing.
Totally.
Yeah, I certainly was not one of them. Sort of fallback career.
Right.
So 2 things with cooking. So pizza, let's start with pizza. What's your favorite type of pizza to like toppings? And then what are toppings that should never go on a pizza in your opinion?
So I'm a not tomato sauce pizza guy.
Okay.
And I'm sort of minimalist. So if you give me like 2 or 3 types of really nice cheese melted in like a bunch of olive oil, basil, and like shaved garlic, like you've won my heart over for the night for sure.
Awesome.
But done really well, right? Like good ingredients done well. And for like the what do you not put on a pizza? It's funny because you've probably heard of like Frank Pepe's pizza, the coal-fired New Haven style pizza. And if not, they're, it's in the pizza world, they're kind of known for like their clam pie. I've seen some restaurants put like clams with actual shells on top of a pizza, and that doesn't make sense to me. I just don't get it.
I'd agree with you on that one. And then, Craig, if someone wants to reach out with any questions they might have for you or to find out more about Baking Steel, we'll have it in the show notes. But obviously, if you want to give it out verbally, now is a perfect chance to do so.
Yeah, you can email me, Craig, CRAIG at bakingsteel.com, or our main support center is info at bakingsteel.com.
Awesome. Any questions for me today, Craig?
I don't think so, man. It's been awesome.
Awesome. Craig Hastings, everyone, culinary director and marketer at Baking Steel. Craig, thank you for your time today. And for more information on Craig, Baking Steel, please, as I mentioned, check out the show notes here. So thanks again, Craig, for joining us. And stay tuned for the next segment of today's podcast. Now it's time for the workflow. So Craig is a really interesting guy. On today's portion of the workflow, I want to dig into really 2 things that he said there that I think is really important for any e-commerce brand to really take away and make their post-purchase messaging more important. The first is treat customers as family. And for myself, I made that purchase. So I received the 3-message series on the actual Baking Steel. And that first message is simply just a bounce back thank you message from Sign with the Company's owner, Andres, as Craig mentioned. So it is really short, mostly just text in there, has a contact email address in there for Andres. So, hey, thanks for your purchase. We appreciate you. Welcome to the family. And it's just something you would do if you gave a gift to someone in your family. So that message really just applies to that, treat them as family. The message 2 and 3 in that series as well is really interesting because it's, as he mentioned, 72-hour pizza dough. But what are you going to do with a baking steel? You're going to cook pizza. So that second message is top 2 recipes of all time. You have the 72-hour pizza dough. And then you have, of course, what goes with pizza? Well, sauce, of course. So someone like me who doesn't know how to make pizza dough or make sauce, I've never made my own sauce in my life. This message is super helpful. It's great. It has what I need if I want it. Otherwise, I can make the dough, buy the sauce, but it's helping me utilize the best it can the product I purchased. Just like you would do if you're helping out a family member. Hey, here's this thing. By the way, here's a great recipe for you. And that third message in the series is how to clean and care for your baking steel. Product care. I love product care post-purchase messages. It instills immediate value in the product. And whether it is a more expensive product or a $3 product. If you tell people how to care for it, it automatically seems much more important from that standpoint. I love recipes and product usage type emails as well. For the fact Baking Steel sends me a product usage one, and then they send me a product care one. Get out of here. I just love it. So I think there's a lot, if you say treat your customers as family, think about your own brand messages that you can send to treat your customers as family that certainly tie into your product. And these are things that really can go a long way. And that's probably why they're seeing 18% conversion rates on 3 emails that don't have any call to actions to make another purchase. So if you think about that, they're not incentivizing, they're not asking you to shop now, they're not asking you to buy complimentary items, although they could if they had complimentary like cleaning products and things like that, right? We talked about the Peel complimentary product, but they're not asking you to do those things. They just want you to utilize the product as best possible. So look at your own e-commerce brand and figure out, hey, can we do things like this? And then maybe put some subtle cross-sells in there and you'll have a really good post-purchase series. And the other thing he said was to start small and utilize support. We've been hearing that all season long about starting small, just throwing something out there. And if you look at that first message of Baking Steel, which is really just mostly a text-based message, of course, you have an image for the brand up there, but it's small and you can implement that and you can get it going and start thanking your customers right from day one. Then you can always go back and iterate and put more graphics in there, make it more beautiful for your customers, but it's a good way to get you started. And then once you utilize support, this is where the fun begins, because this is where you can then say, okay, we've got a one-time purchaser and a two-time purchaser. Let's just simply put a split in that workflow there. And our first-time purchaser will get one message that says this, and a second one will acknowledge that they're a repeat customer. And now you can start different post-purchase series. The same thing really holds true for Baking Steel's case, where you might have an accessory, you might have a griddle purchaser, you might have a Baking Steel purchaser, and say, okay, are they a one-time purchaser? And this is what they purchased, and this is what we get, which is what Baking Steel does. Or have they purchased a Baking Steel and now they're buying the griddle, and we can recognize the fact they're both, and now we can really customize that even more. So yeah, start small, implement it, but then as time goes on, utilize the automation to your advantage. And it could be very small and very simple as first-time customer, repeat customer, different messaging, different strategy. It kind of covers you across the board. So those are 2 really big things that I think Craig had mentioned that I think any brand can really look at and utilize to the best of their ability. So take it with heart. Go ahead, implement your own post-purchase messages. And again, start small, start simple, thank your customers, treat them as family. And I guarantee you, every purchase you get from there is going to be a repeat purchase. So the revenue is going to come. So if you have a post-purchase series, have questions about post-purchase series, share it with Omnisend, share it with me. Of course, you can always email me at podcast@omnisend.com. But again, thanks for listening today and continued success on your post-purchase journey. If you do have any questions, comments, or just want to learn more about how to use email marketing to increase your sales and not your workload, be sure to visit us at omnisend.com. And again, you can always email me at podcast@omnisend.com. Until next time, have a great day and be kind to one another.